The dust settled on Laramie, Wyoming territory, as Loretta Whitmore stood beside her third husband's grave, feeling the weight of 300 pairs of eyes burning holes through her black veil. She was only 26 years old, and already the women whispered she was cursed. The men crossed themselves when she passed, and even the preacher had stammered through the funeral service as though death itself might be contagious. Her first husband, Thomas, had been thrown from a spooked horse just 2 months after their wedding. The second, Samuel, caught pneumonia during a particularly brutal winter and never recovered after 6 months of marriage. Now Robert lay beneath the Wyoming soil, victim of a mining accident that had crushed him under falling timber. 3 years, 3 husbands, 3 graves. Loretta pulled her shawl tighter against the October wind of 1883, watching as the last of the mourners hurried away, their sympathy tainted with superstition. Mrs. Henderson, who had been kind to her once, now clutched her children close and rushed past without a word. Mr. Davies, the shopkeeper, made a sign against evil when he thought she was not looking. She was alone. The boarding house where she had been staying would not have her back. Mrs. Patterson had made that clear before the funeral, apologizing profusely while wringing her hands, but saying she could not risk having such misfortune under her roof. The other boarders had threatened to leave. Loretta walked slowly back toward town, her meager possessions already packed in a single carpet bag. She had nowhere to go. Her parents had died of cholera when she was 17, and her only sister had moved to California years ago, their correspondence sporadic at best. The small amount of money from Robert's belongings would last perhaps a month if she was frugal. The saloon doors swung open as she passed, and she heard the laughter die away, replaced by uncomfortable silence. Someone muttered "Black Widow" just loud enough for her to hear. Loretta kept walking, her spine straight despite the humiliation burning in her chest. She had loved each of her husbands in their own way, had mourned them genuinely, and now she was treated as though she had personally invited death to claim them. The bank manager had been reluctant to see her that afternoon, but she needed to withdraw what little remained in Robert's account. Mr. Thornton had counted out the bills with obvious discomfort, his hands shaking slightly. "I am sorry for your loss, Mrs. Whitmore," he had said, though his eyes contradicted his words. "Will you be staying in Laramie?" "I have not yet decided," she had replied, knowing full well no one in this town would employ her, rent to her, or even speak to her if they could avoid it. As twilight descended, Loretta found herself sitting on a bench outside the general store, watching the lamplighters make their rounds. She needed to find somewhere to sleep, but the hotel owner had already turned her away with barely concealed horror. She was contemplating the indignity of spending the night in the church when she heard bootsteps approaching. "Pardon me, madam." Loretta looked up to see a tall cowboy standing before her, hat in his hands. He was perhaps 30 years old, with sun-weathered skin and kind brown eyes that crinkled at the corners. His dark hair was slightly too long, curling at his collar, and he had the lean, strong build of a man who spent his life working cattle. Unlike everyone else in town, he looked at her directly without fear or judgment. "I am Wyatt Irving," he said, his voice deep and steady. "I have been working a cattle drive up from Texas these past 3 months, so I only just arrived in town today. I could not help but overhear some talk about your situation, and I wanted to offer my assistance." Loretta stiffened. "I do not need charity, Mr. Irving." "I was not offering charity," Wyatt said, settling onto the bench beside her, though maintaining a respectful distance. "I was offering friendship. Sometimes a person just needs to know they are not completely alone in the world." She studied him warily, looking for the catch, the ulterior motive, but found only genuine warmth in his expression. "You do not know me. You do not know what people say about me." "I know gossip when I hear it," Wyatt said. "I also know that bad luck is not the same as bad character. My own mother buried 4 children before they reached their 5th birthdays. People whispered then too, said she was cursed. But the truth was just that life in the West is hard, and sometimes terrible things happen to good people for no reason at all." Tears pricked at Loretta's eyes, the first anyone had spoken to her with such kindness in months. "The whole town thinks I killed my husbands." "The whole town is full of superstitious fools, then." Wyatt's voice was matter of fact rather than judgmental. "I have seen men die from rattlesnake bites, lightning strikes, infected cuts, bad water, and pure bad timing. Death does not need any help finding people out here, especially men doing dangerous work. That does not change the fact that I have nowhere to sleep tonight," Loretta said quietly. "No one will have me." Wyatt was quiet for a moment, considering. "I have been bunking at the cattle camp outside town, but I was planning to rent a room at the boarding house and rest for a spell before heading back to Texas. If you would permit me, I would be happy to rent 2 rooms at the hotel and pay for yours. No strings attached. Just one human being helping another. The hotel already refused me." "They will not refuse me," Wyatt said with certainty, "and if they give you any trouble, they will answer to me." True to his word, Wyatt marched into the Grand Hotel with Loretta beside him, and dealt with the sputtering manager with such calm authority that the man found himself handing over a key before he fully realized what he was doing. Wyatt paid for a week in advance for both rooms, then tipped his hat to Loretta. "Get some rest, Mrs. Whitmore. Tomorrow is a new day." "Why are you doing this?" Loretta asked, genuinely bewildered. "You do not even know me." Wyatt smiled, and it transformed his entire face, making him look younger and almost boyish. "My mama always said that kindness costs nothing but means everything. Besides, I have always believed in taking chances on things that scare other folks. Sometimes the best treasures are the ones everyone else is too afraid to claim." Sleep came easier that night than it had in months. The bed was comfortable, the room was clean, and for the first time since Robert's death, Loretta did not feel the crushing weight of being utterly alone. She rose early, washing in the basin and changing into her only other dress, a simple gray cotton that had seen better days. She had just finished braiding her honey-colored hair when a knock came at the door. Wyatt stood in the hallway with 2 plates of breakfast from the hotel dining room. "I thought you might be hungry," he said. "May I come in?" I promised to leave the door open for propriety's sake. They ate breakfast together as the morning sun streamed through the window. Wyatt told her about his life on the trail, about the vast herds of cattle and the endless Texas sky. He spoke of his plans to eventually buy his own ranch, to build something lasting. "What about you?" he asked, setting his empty plate aside. "What were your dreams before all this happened?" No one had asked Loretta about her dreams in so long that she had almost forgotten she had them. "I wanted to open a bakery," she admitted. "My mother taught me to bake, and I was good at it. Before Thomas died, we had been saving up to buy equipment, but then everything changed." "You could still do it," Wyatt said. "Not here, maybe, but somewhere else. Somewhere no one knows your history." "With what money?" Loretta laughed bitterly. "I have barely enough to survive a few weeks, let alone start a business." Wyatt leaned back in his chair, studying her thoughtfully. "What if I made you a proposition? Not what you are thinking," he added quickly, seeing her expression. "A business proposition. I have been saving my trail wages for 5 years now. I have enough to buy land to start a ranch, but I do not have a home, not really. What I am saying is maybe we could help each other." "I do not understand." "Marry me," Wyatt said simply. A marriage of convenience, if you prefer to think of it that way. You would have a home, protection, a new start away from all these superstitious fools. I would have a wife to help build a ranch, someone to share the work and the profits. We could head down to Texas, buy land near San Antonio where nobody knows either of us. You could have your bakery eventually once we get established. Loretta stared at him, certain she had misheard. You want to marry me, the woman everyone calls cursed, the woman who has buried 3 husbands. I want to help you, Wyatt corrected. And maybe in the process, we both get something we need. I am not asking you to love me, Mrs. Whitmore. I am asking you to trust me. Why would you take such a risk? Wyatt reached across the small table and took her hand gently. His palm was calloused from years of rope work, but his touch was surprisingly tender. Because I do not believe in curses. I believe in people. And I believe that you have had more than your share of bad luck, and you deserve a chance at something good. Loretta felt tears sliding down her cheeks before she could stop them. I cannot ask you to do this. You are not asking, I am offering. Wyatt squeezed her hand gently. Think about it. Take your time. I will be in town for the next few days getting supplies together anyway. But Loretta, I want you to know something. Those 3 men who died, they were not killed by you. They were killed by horses and sickness and accidents, same as thousands of other people in this territory. You are not a curse. You are just a woman who has been dealt a rough hand. Let me help you draw some new cards. They spent the next 3 days together, and Loretta found herself slowly relaxing in Wyatt's company. He was easy to talk to, with a dry sense of humor and an endless supply of stories from the trail. He treated her with unfailing respect, never pressing her for an answer, never making her feel obligated. On the 3rd evening, they sat together on the hotel porch, watching the sun set over the mountains. The proprietor had given them suspicious looks, but Wyatt's money and his steady, calm demeanor kept any real objections at bay. Tell me honestly, Loretta said quietly. Are you sure about this? I mean truly sure, because I could not bear it if something happened to you too. Wyatt turned to look at her, his brown eyes serious in the fading light. I have been thrown from horses, trampled by cattle, caught in stampedes and shot at by rustlers. I have crossed rivers in flood season and weathered tornadoes on the open prairie. If death wants me, he will find me whether I am married to you or not. I would rather spend whatever time I have building something good than living afraid. You are either very brave or very foolish, Loretta said, but she was smiling. Probably a bit of both, Wyatt admitted. So what do you say? Will you take a chance on me, Loretta Whitmore? She looked at this kind, steady man who had appeared in her life like an answer to a prayer she had not known how to voice. He was offering her not just survival, but hope. A fresh start in a place where no one would whisper and point. A partnership with someone who saw her as a person rather than a curse. Yes, she said softly. Yes, I will marry you. Wyatt's face broke into a wide grin. I promise you will not regret this. They were married the next morning by a traveling preacher who had just arrived in Laramie and knew nothing of Loretta's reputation. The ceremony was brief and businesslike, conducted in the preacher's room at the boarding house with the proprietor and her husband serving as witnesses. Wyatt produced a simple gold band that had belonged to his mother, sliding it onto Loretta's finger with gentle reverence. I may not be able to promise you a grand romance, he said quietly, just for her ears, but I can promise you respect, partnership, and a home. The rest we will figure out as we go. Loretta looked down at the ring on her finger, feeling its unfamiliar weight, her 4th marriage. The thought sent a chill through her, but when she looked up into Wyatt's steady, honest face, she felt something she had not felt in years, genuine hope. They left Laramie that afternoon, riding out on 2 horses that Wyatt had purchased, their few belongings packed on a mule. Loretta did not look back at the town that had turned its back on her. Whatever lay ahead in Texas, it had to be better than what she was leaving behind. The journey south took weeks. They traveled slowly, camping under the stars, following the well-worn trails that connected the scattered settlements of the West. Wyatt was an experienced trail hand, and under his guidance they avoided most of the dangers that could befall travelers. He taught her how to spot good water, how to hobble the horses properly, how to build a fire that would burn hot but not smoke too much. At night, they slept on opposite sides of the campfire, maintaining the polite distance of strangers. But gradually, as the days passed, they began to share more of themselves. Loretta told him about her childhood, about her parents and the sister she missed. She spoke about her first husband Thomas, who had been shy and sweet, and Samuel, who had made her laugh, and Robert, who had been steady and dependable. "I did care for them," she said one evening as they sat watching the sun set over the plains. "Each of them. Maybe I did not have the chance to fall deeply in love, but I cared. Their deaths hurt, Wyatt. They hurt so much. And then to have everyone act like I was somehow responsible, like I was glad." "I know," Wyatt said quietly. He had moved to sit beside her, close enough that their shoulders almost touched. "Grief is hard enough without adding blame to it." He told her about his own losses. His father, killed in the Civil War when Wyatt was just 10. His mother, who had worked herself to exhaustion trying to keep the family farm going, dying when he was 18. His younger brother drowned trying to cross a swollen river. "That is why I started working the cattle drives," he said. "The farm had too many ghosts. I needed to keep moving, to keep working, or else the sadness would have swallowed me whole. I have been on the trail for 12 years now, and this is the first time I have seriously considered settling down again." "Why now?" Loretta asked. Wyatt was quiet for a long moment, staring at the fire. "Because I am tired of running from the past, and because I met you." Something shifted between them in that moment. The careful politeness began to give way to genuine warmth. Wyatt started riding closer to her during the day, pointing out interesting birds or unusual rock formations. He made her laugh with silly stories about disastrous cattle drives. When a sudden rainstorm soaked them to the bone, they huddled together under a shared blanket, and neither of them pulled away. They reached Fort Worth in early November, and Wyatt sold the mule and extra horse, using the proceeds to buy supplies for the final leg of their journey. The town was bustling with activity, cattle being loaded onto trains, cowboys fresh off the trail spending their wages in saloons and shops. "We will stock up here and head to San Antonio," Wyatt explained as they walked through the busy streets. "I have been there before, and there is good land available south of the city. Plenty of water, good grazing, and far enough from the border that we should not have too much trouble with bandits." They spent 2 nights in a hotel in Fort Worth, and for the first time, Wyatt rented only 1 room. "We are married," he said, a hint of nervousness in his voice. "And I trust you to tell me what you are comfortable with. We do not have to do anything you do not want to do." That night, they lay together in the same bed, still clothed, talking quietly in the darkness. Wyatt held her hand between them, his thumb tracing gentle circles on her palm. "I am afraid," Loretta admitted. "What if something happens to you? What if the curse is real?" "There is no curse," Wyatt said firmly. "But even if there were, I have never been one to back down from a challenge. You are worth the risk, Loretta. You are worth 10 times the risk." She turned toward him in the darkness, and though she could barely see his face, she could feel the warmth of him, the solid reality of his presence. "I am starting to care for you," she whispered. "Really care. And that terrifies me." "Good," Wyatt said, and she could hear the smile in his voice. Because I have been falling for you since the moment I saw you sitting on that bench, brave and alone and refusing to break. You are the strongest person I have ever met, Loretta Irving." The sound of her new name sent a shiver through her. Loretta Irving, a new name for a new life. "Kiss me," she said impulsively. Wyatt did not need to be asked twice. His lips found hers in the darkness, gentle and questioning at first, then deeper as she responded. His hand cupped her cheek, his fingers threading through her unbraided hair. When they finally broke apart, both of them were breathing hard. "We should probably sleep," Wyatt said, his voice rough. "Probably," Loretta agreed, but she moved closer, resting her head on his chest, listening to the steady beat of his heart. They made love that night, slowly and tenderly, learning each other's bodies in the darkness. Wyatt was patient and careful, making sure she was comfortable, that she wanted this as much as he did. Afterward, Loretta lay in his arms, feeling something she had never quite felt with her other husbands, completely safe and completely cherished. "I love you," she whispered into the darkness. She felt Wyatt's arms tighten around her. "I love you too. I think I have since the first day." The journey to San Antonio took another 2 weeks, but everything felt different now. They were no longer two strangers bound by a marriage of convenience, but partners, companions, lovers. Wyatt sang trail songs as they rode, his voice pleasant if not particularly musical. Loretta found herself laughing more than she had in years, found herself looking forward to each new day. San Antonio was larger than Laramie, more established, with stone buildings and proper streets. The Spanish influence was evident in the architecture, and Loretta found it beautiful and exotic. They stayed at a modest hotel while Wyatt began searching for available land. He found it 3 days later, 20 miles south of the city. 500 acres of good grazing land with a creek running through it, some timber for building, and a meadow that would be perfect for planting crops. The price was more than fair, and Wyatt did not hesitate. He paid in cash, and just like that, they owned their own piece of Texas. "Our land," Wyatt said, squeezing Loretta's hand as they stood looking over their new property. "Our home." They spent the winter building. Wyatt hired 2 local men to help construct a small but sturdy house, while Loretta focused on making it a home. She sewed curtains from fabric purchased in San Antonio, planted a vegetable garden, and began experimenting with a new oven that Wyatt had purchased for her. The house was not large, just 3 rooms, but it was theirs. They had a bedroom with a real bed and a chest of drawers, a main room with a table and chairs and the precious oven, and a small 3rd room that could serve as storage or, someday, a nursery. Their nearest neighbors were a Mexican family, the Garcias, who lived about 5 miles away. Maria Garcia was warm and welcoming, showing Loretta which wild plants were edible and which were poisonous, teaching her Spanish phrases and sharing recipes. Her husband, Diego, helped Wyatt round up wild cattle that roamed the area, the beginning of their herd. "You are lucky, your husband," Maria said one afternoon as she and Loretta worked together preparing food. "He looks at you like you are the sun and moon together." Loretta blushed but could not help smiling. It was true. Wyatt never hid his feelings, never acted ashamed of his affection. He kissed her goodbye each morning, held her close each night, and told her daily that he loved her. By spring, they had established a comfortable routine. Wyatt worked the ranch, slowly building up their cattle herd and breaking horses that he could sell in San Antonio. Loretta tended the garden, kept the house, and began baking bread and pies that Wyatt would take into town to sell. Her baked goods quickly gained a reputation for quality, and soon she had regular customers asking for more. "You are going to have your bakery after all," Wyatt said proudly, counting out the money from her latest batch of sales. "Maybe not a shop in town yet, but this is a start. Life was good, better than Loretta had ever dared to hope. She went weeks without thinking about Laramie, about the whispers and the accusations. The nightmares about watching her husbands die came less frequently. She was healing, moving forward, learning to trust happiness again. Then one morning in late April, she woke feeling nauseated. At first, she thought it was something she had eaten, but when the sickness continued for several days, always in the morning, always fading by midday, she began to suspect the truth. Maria confirmed it when Loretta confided in her. "You are with child," the older woman said, smiling broadly. "This is wonderful news." Loretta should have been overjoyed. She knew she should be. But instead, old fear came rushing back. 3 husbands dead. What if the curse was real? What if Wyatt was next? She tried to hide her anxiety, tried to focus on the positive, but Wyatt knew her too well by now. That evening, as they sat together on the porch watching the sunset, he took her hand. "What is troubling you? You have been quiet all day." "I am pregnant," Loretta said, the words tumbling out. "And I am terrified." Wyatt pulled her into his arms, holding her tight. "This is good news, love. This is wonderful news. What if something happens to you?" The fear she had been suppressing burst out. "What if the curse is real and being married to me kills you too?" "Stop," Wyatt said firmly, pulling back to look into her eyes. "Listen to me, Loretta. There is no curse. Your first husband was thrown from a horse. Terrible, but not unusual. Your second died from pneumonia in a harsh winter. Again, tragic but common. Your third was in a mining accident. These were not supernatural events. They were just the harsh realities of life in the West. But 3 times, Wyatt. 3 times. And I am going to be different," he said confidently. "Not because of magic or luck, but because I am careful. I do not take unnecessary risks. I know how to handle horses. I stay away from mines and I take care of myself. Nothing is going to happen to me, Loretta. I am going to be here to meet our baby and to watch them grow up and to grow old with you. I promise." "You cannot promise that. Watch me." He placed his hand over her still flat stomach. "I am going to be a father. Do you think I would let anything take me away from you and this baby? I have fought off rustlers and survived stampedes. A little thing like fate does not scare me." Despite herself, Loretta laughed through her tears. "You are impossible." "I am determined," Wyatt corrected. "There is a difference. Now, are you going to let me be happy about this baby, or are you going to make me prove how stubborn I can be?" Over the following months, Wyatt did exactly what he had promised. He was careful without being paranoid, taking sensible precautions but not letting fear rule his life. He built a cradle from oak wood, sanding it smooth so there would be no splinters. He expanded the house, adding a proper bedroom for the baby. He worked hard but never recklessly, always coming home safe each evening to hold Loretta and talk to their growing child. Slowly, Loretta's fear began to ease. She started to believe that maybe, just maybe, this time would be different. Wyatt was not Thomas or Samuel or Robert. He was stronger, more experienced, more careful. He loved her in a way that felt unshakable, solid as the Texas bedrock. Her body changed as the baby grew. Wyatt thought she was beautiful pregnant, told her so constantly, running his hands over her swelling belly with wonder. He read to her from the few books they owned, sang silly songs to make her laugh, and never complained when her mood swung wildly from tears to joy. "I love you," she told him one evening as they lay in bed, his hand resting on her stomach where the baby was kicking. "I love you so much it scares me sometimes." "I love you too," Wyatt said, kissing her forehead. "More than I knew it was possible to love someone. You and this baby are my whole world." The baby came in late November, during the first cold snap of winter. Maria Garcia came to help with the birth. her experienced hands and calm demeanor keeping Loretta focused through the long hours of labor. Wyatt paced outside, too nervous to sit still, until finally Maria opened the door with a broad smile. "You have a son," she announced. "A healthy, strong boy." Wyatt rushed inside to find Loretta propped up in bed, exhausted but glowing, holding a tiny bundle wrapped in a blanket. He approached slowly, reverently, as though afraid he might break the spell. "This is our son," Loretta said softly, pulling back the blanket to reveal a tiny red face and a shock of dark hair. "What should we name him?" They had discussed names for months but never quite decided. Wyatt reached out one finger and the baby's tiny hand wrapped around it, gripping with surprising strength. "James," Wyatt said. "After my father, James Irving." "James," Loretta repeated, smiling. "I think that is perfect. Being parents transformed them both." Wyatt discovered reserves of patience he had not known he possessed, walking the floor with a crying baby at all hours of the night. Loretta found strength she had thought lost, managing the demands of an infant while still keeping the household running. James was a good baby, healthy and alert. He had Wyatt's dark hair and Loretta's blue eyes, and both of his parents were completely besotted. Wyatt would spend hours just watching him sleep, marveling at his tiny perfection. "I cannot believe we made this," he said one evening, holding James carefully while Loretta prepared dinner. "This perfect little person, it seems impossible." "But real," Loretta said, coming to stand beside them. She looked at her husband holding their son, and her heart felt so full she thought it might burst. "This is real, Wyatt, this life we have built. It is really real." Winter passed into spring, and James grew from a tiny infant into a chubby, happy baby who smiled at everyone and everything. The ranch continued to prosper. Wyatt's careful management meant their herd was growing steadily, and Loretta's baking business had expanded to the point where she was considering renting space in town for a proper shop. On their first wedding anniversary, Wyatt surprised her with a gift, a professionally made sign that read "Loretta's Bakery" in beautiful script lettering. "When you are ready," he said. "When you want to take that next step, we will make it happen. I believe in you." "I never thanked you properly," Loretta said, tears in her eyes, "for that day in Laramie, for taking a chance on me when no one else would." Wyatt pulled her close, careful not to wake James, who was sleeping in his cradle nearby. "You do not need to thank me. You gave me everything I needed too. A home, a family, a purpose. We saved each other, Loretta." 2 years later, Loretta did open her bakery in San Antonio. It was a small shop on a side street, but it had a good oven and plenty of space for working. She hired a young woman named Annie to help her, and together they produced breads, pies, cakes, and pastries that became famous throughout the city. Wyatt managed the ranch with the help of 2 hired hands, Mexican cowboys who were skilled with cattle and horses. The herd had grown to over 200 head, and they were expanding into horse breeding as well. Money was no longer a constant worry. They were not rich, but they were comfortable, secure. James was 3 when Loretta discovered she was pregnant again. This time there was no fear, only joy. Wyatt swept her up in his arms, spinning her around until she was dizzy and laughing. "Another baby," he exclaimed. "James is going to be a big brother." Their daughter was born in the spring of 1888, during a thunderstorm that rattled the windows and made the horses nervous. She came quickly, much faster than James had, as though impatient to meet the world. They named her Ruth, after Loretta's mother. Ruth was different from James from the very beginning. Where he had been calm and easy, she was fierce and demanding. She had Loretta's honey-colored hair and Wyatt's brown eyes, and a will of iron that made both her parents laugh in exhausted admiration. "She is going to be trouble," Wyatt predicted, cradling his tiny daughter while she glared at him suspiciously. I can already tell. Good, Loretta said. The world needs more women who are not afraid to demand what they deserve. Life settled into a new rhythm with 2 children. James adored his baby sister, wanting to help with everything. Loretta juggled the bakery with motherhood, sometimes bringing the children to work with her when Wyatt was out on the range. Annie proved invaluable, equally comfortable managing the shop or entertaining 2 energetic children. The years passed in a blur of happiness and hard work. James started school in San Antonio, riding in with Loretta 3 days a week. Ruth grew into a wild, fearless child who could ride before she could write and preferred her father's company on the ranch to anything else. Wyatt proved every day that Loretta's fears had been unfounded. He was solid, steady, careful without being afraid. He taught James how to rope and ride, how to gentle a horse and track a stray cow. He let Ruth tag along with him whenever she wanted, answering her endless questions with patience and humor. In 1892, they added a 3rd child to their family, another son they named Daniel. He was a perfect baby, hardly crying, sleeping through the night almost immediately and growing like a weed. James, now 7, took his role as big brother seriously, while Ruth, at 4, was less impressed with a baby who could not yet play. The ranch continued to expand. They bought adjacent land when it became available, eventually owning over 1,000 acres. The house was expanded twice, growing from the original 3 rooms to a proper ranch house with a parlor, a real kitchen, 4 bedrooms, and even a bathtub. They installed a pump in the kitchen, saving Loretta countless trips to the well. The bakery thrived. Loretta hired 2 more workers and began supplying bread to several restaurants in San Antonio. She was known for her fairness as an employer and her generosity with those who were struggling. More than once, she gave day-old bread away to families who could not afford to pay. On a warm evening in June 1895, Loretta and Wyatt sat together on their porch, watching their children play in the yard. James was 11 now, tall and responsible, helping Daniel learn to throw a ball. Ruth, 7, was climbing the old oak tree despite her mother's frequent warnings to be careful. "Do you ever think about Laramie?" Wyatt asked, his arm around Loretta's shoulders. "Sometimes," she admitted, "but not with pain anymore. More like remembering a different life, one that happened to someone else. I am not that frightened woman anymore." "No, you are not," Wyatt agreed. "You are a successful businesswoman, a wonderful mother, and the love of my life. You are everything those superstitious fools said you would never be." "Because you gave me a chance," Loretta said. "Because you said you would take your chances with me, and you meant it." Wyatt turned to look at her, his eyes warm with love. "Best chance I ever took. You know, I told you that first day that I could not promise you a grand romance, but I think I was wrong. This has been the greatest romance of my life. Every single day with you is an adventure. Even when I am covered in flour and yelling at the children," Loretta teased. "Especially then," Wyatt said, pulling her closer. "You are beautiful when you are covered in flour. You are beautiful when you are exhausted and annoyed. You are beautiful first thing in the morning and last thing at night. You are the most beautiful thing in my world, Loretta Irving." "I love you," she said, the words as easy and natural as breathing. "I love you more than I thought it was possible to love someone." "I love you too," Wyatt said. "Forever." They sat together as the sun set, painting the Texas sky in shades of orange and gold, watching their children play and listening to their laughter. Loretta thought about the journey that had brought her here, about the pain and loss that had seemed insurmountable, about the fear that had nearly destroyed her. And then she thought about Wyatt, appearing in her life when she needed him most, refusing to believe in curses or bad luck, seeing only a woman who needed a chance. He had given her more than a home or security. He had given her back her faith in the future, her ability to love without fear. The curse, if it had ever existed, was well and truly broken now. 12 years of marriage, 3 beautiful children, a thriving ranch, and a successful business. Wyatt was as strong and healthy as the day they had met, maybe even more so, filled with purpose and love and contentment. In 1897, when Loretta was 39 and Wyatt was 43, they welcomed their 4th and final child, a daughter they named Emma. She was the baby of the family, doted on by her older siblings and utterly spoiled by both parents. James was 13, Ruth was 9, and Daniel was 5, and all of them were enchanted by their baby sister. "Our family is complete," Wyatt said, holding Emma while she slept peacefully against his chest. "4 beautiful children and the love of my life. I could not ask for anything more." "Neither could I," Loretta agreed, leaning against his shoulder. "You gave me everything I thought I had lost. Hope, love, family, purpose. Everything." The years continued to pass, each one bringing new joys and challenges. James grew into a fine young man, eventually taking over much of the ranch management from his aging father. He was as steady and reliable as Wyatt had always been, with a natural gift for working with horses. Ruth, true to her fierce nature, proved to be an excellent rider and an even better businesswoman. She took over the bakery when Loretta decided to step back, expanding it into 3 locations across San Antonio and starting a wholesale operation that supplied stores throughout South Texas. Daniel studied law, the first Irving to attend university. He was gentle and thoughtful, with a passion for justice that made both his parents proud. Emma, the baby, turned out to have a gift for music, her voice so pure and beautiful that she sang in the church choir from the age of 7. Wyatt and Loretta watched their children grow and thrive with immense pride. They became grandparents when James married a sweet girl named Clara and had 2 sons of his own. Ruth married a banker and had 3 daughters who inherited their mother's spirit and their grandmother's beauty. Daniel married his college sweetheart and had 1 son. Even Emma eventually married, though she waited until she was 25, wedding a music teacher who appreciated her talent. Through it all, through decades of life and love and change, Wyatt and Loretta remained devoted to each other. They grew old together, his dark hair turning silver, her honey-colored locks fading to white. They moved a bit slower, their hands becoming gnarled with age, but their love never diminished. On their 40th wedding anniversary in 1923, their children and grandchildren gathered at the ranch for a celebration. There were 23 grandchildren by then, ranging from infants to teenagers, filling the house with noise and laughter. Wyatt stood to make a toast, his voice still strong despite his 67 years. 40 years ago, I met a woman sitting on a bench in Laramie, Wyoming. She was alone, hurting, and had been dealt a terrible hand by life. Everyone in that town thought she was cursed, that bad luck followed her wherever she went. But I looked at her and saw something different. I saw strength, courage, and a heart that refused to break no matter what the world threw at it. He turned to Loretta, taking her hand. I told her I would take my chances with her, and it was the smartest decision I ever made. She was not cursed. She was not unlucky. She was just waiting for the right person to see her for who she really was. These 40 years have been the greatest gift of my life. This woman, our children, our grandchildren, this life we built together, I would not change a single moment. Loretta stood, tears streaming down her face. I was so afraid the day we met, afraid of being alone, afraid of always being defined by my losses, afraid that I would never know real love. And then this stubborn cowboy appeared and refused to believe in curses. He gave me a chance when no one else would, and in doing so, he gave me everything. I love you, Wyatt Irving. I have loved you for 40 years, and I will love you for 40 more if we are lucky." Their children and grandchildren applauded, several of them crying as well. It was a perfect day, full of love and laughter, a testament to the life they had built together. Wyatt lived to be 74, finally passing peacefully in his sleep in 1930, surrounded by his family. He had lived to see the automobile replace the horse, the airplane take to the skies, and the world transform in ways he could never have imagined. But through all the changes, his love for Loretta had remained constant. Loretta mourned him deeply, but without the crushing despair that had characterized her earlier losses. She had been blessed with 47 years of his love, had built a beautiful life with him, had created a legacy that would last for generations. She missed him terribly, but she was not destroyed by his death. He had given her too much strength for that. She lived another 12 years, dying quietly at age 85 in 1942, surrounded by her children and many of her grandchildren. Her last words were a smile and a whisper. "I am coming, Wyatt. Wait for me." The ranch stayed in the family for generations, the Irving name becoming synonymous with quality cattle and horses throughout Texas. The bakery Ruth had expanded eventually grew into a regional chain, still bearing Loretta's name and using her recipes. Daniel's descendants included lawyers, judges, and even a state senator. Emma's musical talent passed down through her children and grandchildren, several of whom became professional musicians. But more than the business success or the material legacy, what Loretta and Wyatt left behind was a story. A story about courage in the face of fear, about taking chances on people everyone else had given up on, about the transformative power of love and trust. Their great-grandchildren would tell the story to their children, about the woman who was called cursed and the cowboy who did not believe in bad luck, about how he took a chance on her, and how she rewarded his faith by building a life more beautiful than either of them could have imagined. About how love, real love, can overcome anything, even the darkest superstitions and the cruelest twists of fate. The old house in Laramie was long gone, replaced by newer buildings as the town grew and modernized. The people who had whispered about Loretta Whitmore and called her a black widow were dead themselves, their fears and superstitions forgotten. But in Texas, on a ranch that stretched across the land under the endless sky, the legacy of Loretta and Wyatt Irving lived on, a testament to the truth that sometimes the bravest thing you can do is take a chance on someone everyone else is too afraid to believe in, and that real love, the deep and lasting kind, is always worth the risk. Their graves lay side by side in the family cemetery on the ranch, under a spreading live oak tree. The headstones were simple, bearing their names, dates, and a single phrase that captured everything they had meant to each other. Love without fear, forever united. And on warm Texas evenings, when the wind rustled through the oak leaves and the cattle lowed in the distance, it was easy to imagine that they were still there somehow, still sitting on the porch together, still holding hands as they watched the sunset, still proving every day that the greatest adventure in life is loving someone completely, without reservation, despite everything the world might say or do. The story of Loretta and Wyatt became a favorite at family gatherings, passed down through the generations along with photographs that showed their progression from young newlyweds to silver-haired elders surrounded by their descendants. The ring Wyatt had placed on Loretta's finger that day in Laramie became a treasured heirloom, passed down to eldest daughters in each generation, a symbol of the courage it takes to love and be loved. Their children never forgot the lessons their parents had taught them, both through words and through example. James passed down his father's wisdom about careful management and respect for the land. Ruth embodied her mother's business acumen and her refusal to let others define her worth. Daniel inherited their sense of justice and fairness. Emma carried on their appreciation for beauty and joy in life. And all of them, every single one of their descendants, learned the most important lesson: that people are not defined by their worst moments or their darkest days, that bad luck is not destiny, and that sometimes the greatest act of courage is simply refusing to give up on someone everyone else has abandoned. The legacy of that one moment, when a cowboy approached a woman on a bench and said he would take his chances with her, rippled out through time, touching countless lives, proving that one act of kindness and faith can change not just a single life, but generations to come.